All right, guys, we're live. We are back. Felt like we were just together. We were just together a few days ago, but we're back. We are going to do something a little different today. But first, we should acknowledge that it is President's Day, where we celebrate and honor all of those who have served as presidents of the United States, not just Washington and Jefferson and Lincoln and whoever. It's everybody. So I hope everyone just think about your favorite president and honor them.
Do you have a favorite president?
Are we going to do that?
I mean, I'd like to. I have mine ready to roll, so I would love to.
Do you have? How many do you have? What's your list like?
I mean, I have one that's above everyone else, and then I've got a top 5.
Yeah,
a ranking.
Yeah, yours is William Henry Harrison, right? It's always been kind of top for you.
Yeah, I like guys that they don't last longer than they need to. It's just like get in, get out, get on with your business.
Yeah. I mean, well, FDR is my favorite president.
Without question.
He's the best. He's the best one.
I don't think that's close.
But what does the Japanese internment camp do to your overall score of Roosevelt? As we've learned more about this over the years, how does that shape your view of him?
It's a good question. Well, as you guys know, American history is complex, and these are the kinds of things I didn't learn about until like college. You go through, you learn about U.S. history, and then you go back and learn about U.S. history in college, and it's totally different.
You're like, wait a minute.
Crazy.
I know.
Well, they didn't tell us any of the bad shit these people did. It's bad.
They give you just enough to get you like the beats of history. And then, you go back and you're like, I'm going to take this highly specialized course that only counts for, very specific credit that I need in my, to graduate with 120 credits as an undergrad. And now I learn, are you fucking kidding me? Now you're going to tell me all this stuff? It's insane.
I mean, I do think that, go ahead, Megan.
I was just going to say, growing up in Michigan, it wasn't just specific beats that I learned about history. I learned a very specific perspective on history that was very much not true in a lot of ways. It's very much from a certain perspective, especially when I was young. But yeah, I just finished this book that I've read about American history, and it taught me so much. And I think the biggest thing is that even the greats were flawed, and everybody had to make compromises, and some of them were, really hard. And that's kind of sad thing about American history. One of the many sad things.
I think it's like impossible at this point to think about what it was like during World War II in this country. Like after Pearl Harbor, I mean, people were living in like a state of constant panic,
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that stuff is just what you were saying, Brian, or your question. I feel like it was just such a different time. But I mean, he was the only president who really or the first maybe, who really just tried to keep poor people in mind, mostly. Even though that's kind of even though it's like kind of what they're supposed to do, but he really did it. It's kind of amazing.
Well, and he reset the terms of what it meant to be president and what the expectations were, as you're absolutely right, around having a system that protects, at least as a safety net for the poor. So much so that ever since the late 1940s, I mean, even during his period, there were lots of people, we don't hear as much about them, but there were people who were arguing against what he was doing as loudly as they're arguing in favor of the opposite policies today. And so you really see the power of what he was trying to put forth because of the opposition. I will say, though, I'm not going to give you my whole top 5, but I will just say over the last year or so, James Madison really, really rising up for me. I'm a devotee to the Constitution and to the vision that Madison had, and I'd encourage everyone out there to read more about him.
It's pretty interesting. Do you have a favorite president? Well, I mean, I'm very much tied to the Roosevelt family because of how I grew up when I was really little. Right. I think I've told you guys this story, but my parents.
You actually are a Roosevelt.
Yeah. I guess I could say that in a very, very not correct way. When my parents were young and my dad was in grad school and my mom was teaching and I was a young girl until I was 3 years old, I lived in the guest house on Eleanor Roosevelt's property before it became a museum. And when my parents were at a kind of cocktail party that they were throwing on the property. They invited my parents, and my parents went, and someone came over to them and said, they're going to turn this property into a museum, and they're going to have to buy you out of your rental lease. And that's how my parents got money to get their first down payment to buy a house. So the Roosevelt Museum is a huge part of my family's history. And now you can go to that estate, to Eleanor Roosevelt's estate, Valkill it's called, and you can walk through the house that I lived in for my first 3 years of my life because it's a museum now. So cool.
The Roosevelt family set you up. They are there to pay it forward. Nowadays, they would say there's just too much DEI in this house because there are women living here and speaking and reading. And so we're just going to take it from you.
Exactly. No, it's a cool connection. And I've always loved reading about them. And I love Eleanor Roosevelt. I know she's not a president, but I do think that women like her and Hillary Clinton are women I've always deeply admired for their intellectual pursuits and their doggedness, despite being publicly hated for being women who spoke up and made things happen. So,
yeah.
And I also got to meet Bill Clinton once. Completely charmed.
Yeah.
Completely charmed.
That's the whole point.
Meeting is definitely like a loose term here, but it was a book signing, and I stood in line for a very long time to meet Bill Clinton because I'd never met a president before. And when I got up to the line, I brought my book up and I was like, "Hi, Mr. Clinton." And he was like, looked up with those blue eyes. He goes, "Please call me Bill." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I will. Indeed, I will." These giant blue eyes, just like, yeah, it was great. So I like Bill Clinton, despite being a deeply flawed man.
That's his whole thing. That's his number one. That's his number one advantage in life. It's like being charming.
The good thing is we've kicked out all the deeply flawed men, and now we have Chuck Schumer with his glasses down over his nose, holding up a Corona and an avocado, teaching us the lessons of American democracy. It's amazing. Great work, guys.
Okay. We're going to move on. For those of you listening who didn't think you were getting a political lecture, we're going to move on. First of all, we have a new draft winner to announce. New because I won the last one. The new one is the old one. Out with the old and with the new, which is the same as the old. Congrats, Megan. You won. According to our poll that we sent out. I don't count the social media polls. They're biased, and Mark Zuckerberg is promoting them, algorithms. No, but the Google form that people filled out, 53.7% of the vote. That's a plurality in any district.
That's a mandate these days, I'll tell you what.
Yes, mandate.
Oh my God.
Which means you control the draft from now on. Congrats.
It's your responsibility. Well done.
Oh boy. Thanks, everyone. I went with my heart, voted for my favorites, but I also played with a lot of strategy. So I appreciate the congratulations.
I'm so happy with the albums I got. I'm gonna only listen to the albums I drafted from now on. I'm never listening to another one. I'm gonna be happy. Okay, we got a Mount Rushmore debut episode coming out either next week or in 2 weeks, right? So we got you guys got to get your votes in for your top 4 versions of Bathtub Gin. We got some input, but we want more. We're gonna announce the fan votes. We're gonna announce our own votes. We're gonna have conversations about this. It's gonna be great. We've figured out what it's going to look like, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I know people have been sending in their thoughts, but just keep sending them because we want to hear your votes.
I am officially ready for that episode. I've got my top 4 finished. I've got honorable mentions in case we don't have enough content, and I've got the relegated versions from the long list. So I'm ready for that. I'm jumping into the next 4 or 5 episodes just to try to get ahead of the game because we got lots of music to listen to in 2025, and Goose decided to be a great band again, so now I have to listen to them even more. And but very excited for the Mount Rushmore episode. I think you all out there will enjoy kind of the competitive nature that we've structured these episodes in, while also allowing us to just dive as deep as possible and completely nerd out on why we think certain versions of certain songs are arbitrarily the most important. So can't wait.
Have we told everybody how we're doing it? I
don't know. Maybe we should.
Can we tell everybody about that?
Yeah, we have not.
So the way that we're going to do it is each episode, one of us is going to be in charge of picking our top 4 Mount Rushmore versions of these songs. And then we'll talk those through. And then at the end, the other two people will share their top 4 and we'll see kind of how they're similar and different. And then we'll talk about fan vote as well. Did I leave anything out?
Well, I mean, when we finish an episode, are we like, if there's 2 versions, say that you guys have on your list, that I don't have on mine, are we going to figure out a way to like encapsulate a full Mount Rushmore? Maybe this requires a HF Pod meeting post episode. I don't know, but you're absolutely right. We're going to have like one person give their perspective and then some response, which I think should be really fun from an episode by episode standpoint. That'll rotate throughout the series.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be really fun.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And we're going to, it's going to be great. But I do think the host in charge of that one there, that's the Mount Rushmore, there's no,
That's the list. Whew,
Okay.
a lot of pressure.
So much pressure.
So,
A lot of trolling too. Like I have to choose Iculus despite never having seen the song. I saw that on there and I was like, this is funny.
it's good.
I like this.
It's good. Smart. It's Brian's assignments. Being
I
funny.
know.
Being really funny. RJ's going to have Possum to do it at some point.
Can't wait.
So funny.
That'll be easy.
It'll
I'll
be
just pick 4 randomly because they're all the same. Okay. We have a bunch of reprise shows coming up. I want to tell you guys about. We had the first one is in a couple weeks or maybe 10 days in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. At the Met. There's the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th in Worcester, Saratoga, New York, and New Hope. And then at the end of March in Killington, and then mid-April, Nectar's, then Broadbrook, Connecticut, and then Northampton. So we got a bunch of shows. There's going to be a bunch more announced soon. So if you guys haven't seen them, check them out. Go to repriseband.com and you can see the tour dates and tickets and stuff.
Yeah, and we have to talk about what they're playing in Brooklyn.
We do. You should.
They're
I don't know. I don't know what they're playing. What are they playing?
They're going to play my favorite Fish show of all time in Brooklyn for me. They're going to play 12/30/97. Like that.
They're going to say the 4th day of
so
Monday Green. No.
Crazy. It's gonna be
crazy.
so crazy. I know. I can't believe I get to relive that experience and actually remember more of it this time.
It's the ninth ranked show of all time according to Fish.net's ratings.
I think that's too low, but super low.
I mean, it's below 11/22/97.
What is before it? Like everything that they've played in the last 2 years? Like
no, nothing. No, they've somehow pushed anything recent out of the top 10.
Thank God.
But there are 2 other 97 shows ahead of it, 11/17, 11/22, which I don't think either of those are better. But they're all in the 4. Actually, sorry, 4.634 is the rating for all 3 of those shows. So you can count it as number 6 if you want.
Oh, okay, because they've kind of like. Mm-hmm.
I think that's still too low, but
yeah.
Oh my!
You got Big Cypress, 4/3/98, 6/14/2000, Halloween 94, 2/28/03, New Year's 95, and then this. I don't know if you put it above any of those.
I mean, so Drum's logo is above this. Yeah, that's interesting. It's a little bit hard at that level to kind of decide which is better than others.
That's why we should just have tiers, Let's not worry about 1, 2, 3, 4. Like these, it's a top 10 show. Any way you look at it.
Yes.
I don't personally think any other Fish show contains all elements of what makes Fish special in one show. This one does. Somehow it does. And that has to count for something. Even Big Cypress, which is outstanding and absolutely deserves to be in there. Even 12/31/95. I don't think any of these shows like contain all these different elements. The narration, segues, bust outs, huge jams, peek beneath, behind the curtain to see that it's just 4 guys, but that's the point, the curfew element to it. I mean, come on.
No.
So this is a great show. The only thing I ask of Reprise when they cover this is that they figure out like the whatever happens around like 13:25 in that AC/DC bag when they're building, and then Fishman hits a snare and they all just connect at the same time. Like, just study that, guys. Those guys do such a good job reinterpreting the jams. Just put that like 30 seconds in there, all right? Please. Is that too much to ask?
I bet they could do that. I can't wait to see how they're going to do it.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Definitely
it's going to be fun. Tell your friends, tell everybody, tell your enemies, tell everybody. We want everyone there. We're gonna be We're gonna be. I'm gonna be at the 7th in Saratoga and the 8th in New York, maybe the 9th in New Hope. I'll be at a bunch of these shows, so if you guys see us out there, say hi. There is going to be some recreation, and some interpretation on their own. Brian, to your question, I think putting like 11-17 above this is kind of crazy, personally.
That's totally crazy, I think.
Even though it has one of the best jams, obviously. But
yes, that's it. That's the one
it.
reason why it's above there, and the live. I mean, they're both live fish releases. I don't know. I think that there's almost like a reverse mystique going on there.
Mm-hmm.
There's no video evidence of 11-17-97 happening. It was played across I-25 in a now defunct, torn down arena where the Denver Nuggets won 11 games in 1997.
That's awesome.
I don't even think the picture from the live fish release is from 11-17-97. I think it's actually from 11-16. It's just it's a mind-blowing, holy crap, it happened.
You say it's like a Cornell 77 thing, like maybe it's not real?
I think it's definitely real, but it's as close to that as we get here in fishdom, where like, how did this show that
theories
started with Tweezer, went into Reba, has this crazy ghost, goes into fire, like a Johnny Be Good that goes into the interstellar space. Like there's a lot of what the hell. The note around the yam in fish.net on the jam charts is an excellent version, but easily the most overrated yam ever played. Like there's just a lot of yin and yang with that show that like I think people are just like, no, it has to be in the top 5.
People die for that ghost too. Like they die for
a great ghost.
I mean, come on.
Outstanding ghost. There's not
a
wrong.
You guys want to talk
incredible.
If you guys want to talk more about my conversation with Trey about that ghost, we can, because it's one of the coolest things that ever happened to me. You guys want to talk about that?
Are you asking if we want to talk more about the ghost or more about your conversation with Trey about the ghost?
That ghost is ranked.
I just want to clarify.
That ghost is ranked number 5 on my all-time jams list.
Oh, I forgot I was going to start that project this winter as well and see where our lists combined and diverged. But
I started. It's very hard to do, I find.
It is.
Goose just decided to play a really good tour.
Oh yeah.
By the way,
I just wanted to say for everyone listening, Brian said that Goose decided to be good again. I have been on the record and off the record saying that Goose has been awesome continuously, and Brian and Megan jumping on and off the wagon or boat, whatever we're on. I'm just saying.
I still listen. I'm just trying to be as honest as I possibly can about this sort of stuff.
That's all that you can do in life. All right.
No, I think that Megan, it's not that I've been off. It's just that it takes a lot for me to be listening to every single show you play. Like you have to be smoking it for me to do that, which Goose has done at times for me. And it just because I have a lot of, I've got a lot of stuff I want to listen to right now and read and watch. So you've got to be really unbelievable for me to watch everything that you play or listen to. And there was a time they were doing that, and maybe they're back. I don't know. I just started listening to this tour, so we'll see. But I've always loved Goose. Always love them. They're the best. They're amazing.
So back.
But they're back apparently.
Megan, is there anything else we were supposed to talk about?
We should tell people about library card.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a new episode out. We just dropped a new episode about Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro, and we had a really great conversation because it's a interesting book, and I think the conversation was nuanced and it was fun because we all weren't coming from the same perspective, which I think really made the conversation more interesting and more layered. So it was great. And our next episode's in a few weeks, and we're going to talk about Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. And a lot of people have been reading the books and participating in the show with us. And this is definitely a book you should read so that you can be involved in this conversation with us, because this book is mind-blowing and it's incredible. And she's one of my favorite authors. And I'm really excited to dig in deep on this book because there's so much in it.
Yeah, I don't know how to even prepare for this episode. There's so much to cover. There are so many 20-page years of his life that you just dive deep into, and I've probably forgotten at this point in time. And so I can't
I
wait
know.
to revisit this. There's so much. It's an unbelievable book.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. This is going to be episode number 5. So we're
Crazy.
and I just want to tell you guys, those of you listening who've been listening for a long time, that we've made a lot of podcasts. I've made the most podcasts. Brian's made the second most podcasts. Megan has made some podcasts too. According to available data, a significant minority of podcasts make it past 5 episodes, with estimates suggesting that around 90% of podcasts do not even reach episode 3. So
Really?
we're already among the rarefied air of podcasters, guys. We got to episode 5. I mean, if it happens,
You're not
I
there
think it will.
yet.
I think it will. Let's not jinx it. We've been doing okay here at HF Pod. We're beyond 5. I think we'll keep going. It's touch and go at times, but I don't think we're going anywhere. We have 461 episodes in Apple Podcasts, according to that app. I think there's probably 20 that aren't on there. So I'd say we're like approaching 500.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I mean, if we were able to, if this were to turn into something that we did like regularly, I think that we would at least record 3 episodes a week. I think we have enough.
Oh.
I think
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we have way more to say. So we're not finishing anytime soon here. We just, we can't live without it.
100%.
Especially we keep coming up with awesome series and great drafts, keeping everyone on their toes. All right. So the whole idea of today's episode, why we're here, is we're going to talk about what fish we go to when we need some warmth. I don't know about you guys, but it's fucking cold. It's cold
so
again.
Cold here.
We had 50-mile-per-hour winds yesterday. A big tree fell on part of my house. It was during these gusts that I think we're up to like 60. I think the wind's only like 25 or 30 miles per hour right now, but now it's back from being like 40 to being like 20. So it's a good timing for me because it's fucking freezing. I was thinking, like, I don't know, shows, albums, jams. Do you guys even think about fish in this way? This whole discussion is based on a presumption that we have time to listen to fish for fun and not to prep for episodes. So let's just pretend that we are in a world where we're just listening to fish. First question is, do you have seasonal fish? I think you probably do, Brian, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you have fish that you listen to in different seasons?
Well, that's how I approach this. I will say that like my listening patterns have changed over the last couple of years. I used to do the whole it's February 17th, so I would listen to February 17th, 1997, at least the second set. I don't do it as much anymore because it became such a habit and I started not hearing the surprises I was looking for. So now when I reach for fish, it's either in the general vicinity and I want to hear a show I haven't heard before from around this time, which can be challenging during the winter months because this band doesn't tend to tour as much during the winter. And I've selected a few of these, a couple choice summer shows and summer jams that just sound like an amphitheater, sound like the guitar is just going out into the lawn and fittering out into the air, and you can feel the humidity, and it just gives you that sensation of summer in the middle of winter. And then finally, now that we've had 8 Mexico fish runs, and now that I've been to Mexico and know like the midwinter stopover where fish jams right by the ocean in the middle of February or late January, now I get the sensation of, oh, when I put this on, it takes me back to that and helps, even regardless what the groundhog, or is it the groundhog? Yeah, the groundhog, whatever the groundhog says, spring is on the horizon. It will return. We'll be good again. What about you guys?
Well, I think about it it's interesting. I don't really listen to summer fish during the winter. I'm much more likely to go for like winter, fall, indoor, like, hot inside, hot music, shredding. I think in the summer I'm not really listening to. I guess I listen along with the season I'm in, but I'm trying to like warm up with Trey's shredding, probably mostly.
Well, can I clarify one thing?
Yeah,
Because I was
yeah.
thinking about this before I kind of built out my list. I think of like November and December fish as its own beast. And like during the months of November and December, there's so much to turn to from a fish standpoint. January, February, March is like its own isolated experience. And so when it gets cold out, I'm absolutely doing what you're talking about. But when we get to this time of year, it's a slightly different approach, at least from my perspective.
That makes sense. I thought about it a little bit differently. I think about the mood I'm in this time of year. And this time of year, I'm always feeling more introspective or mellow, more quiet, more contemplative. So that's the kind of fish that I want to listen to this time of year. So my list is more what makes me feel that way and what's good for like curling up with a book and a cup of tea or like sitting under a bunch of blankets on the couch and thinking, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the mood that I'm in this time of year. So I'm always looking for fish that will make me feel like that.
Like that.
Yeah. Yeah. What about, I mean, we just did the album draft, so we all like listened to some or all of the Fish albums. Do you guys listen to Fish albums, and do they change by season? Because there are Fish albums that definitely have like a winter vibe versus a spring or summer or fall vibe. I feel like that's where you could see the most contrast in terms of sound.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny because I think after re-listening to all of these albums, I want to listen to more Studio Fish now because I was pretty blown away by some of the stuff I heard and how differently they approach the studio. I think that to me, it's more like the older albums are more nostalgic and make me feel young as opposed to a certain season or vibe. And then the older albums make me think more, just kind of make me more contemplative about where the band is and what they've kind of accomplished and what they've done. And also just, I've really loved the last few Fish albums. I think they've been awesome. I think Evolve and Sigma are so good. And I've listened to those more than I would have expected that I would have.
I listen to 2 Fish albums. I don't tend to reach for others. I do, however, listening back, like Junta, for example, and the White Tape, I felt like that would be stuff that I should listen to if I'm driving or, like, on a road trip.
Mm,
But if I'm gonna 99 out of 100 times, if I'm gonna reach for Fish, I'm reaching for a live show.
yeah, same.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it feels
It's
like,
just nothing is good.
but like when we're listening to new music or listening to new shows, I mean, it would make sense. It'd be totally fun to put on Rift or something. It just doesn't really happen.
Well, that's the one I
Yeah.
listen to the most. But yeah.
Yeah. I just don't like ever really, unless I'm forced to by you guys. So
I mean, that album is like one of my top 10 albums of all time. It changed my life. So that album is something I do play. I probably play it a couple times a year just to hear it.
wow. I don't think there's a single Fish album on my top 20 of all time list. Maybe that's a problem. Maybe I need.
I don't think there is on mine. No, I think that they're just in such a separate category because I think like
Mm,
one of the points it sounds like you're making is, and something we talked about last week is the fact that like Fish albums tend to be like a rock in a river that you're trying to get across. Like they're like a stopping point, where the band had these ideas, these songs, this sound in their head, and it just like puts that to wax. And then where you actually hear them diving off into what a specific song can do or can be is in the live show. And I think what sets Rift apart in a lot of cases is the fact that aside from a few versions of Maze, recent versions of My Friend, a couple versions of It's Ice. For the most part, those songs are played pretty close to the way that they're played on the record. So the
mhm.
record kind of like captures these really special songs written in a very formative point in their career and presents them in a very similar way to how you're going to hear those songs in concert. And so it kind of takes like a pristine version of a song that you'll hear like Mound at a show, but puts it like that's like the tightest version. Whereas like an album like Picture of Nectar, like you've got Chalk Dust Torture and Tweezer on that album. Like those are just like small samplings of what this band was able to do with those songs. Or like an album like Hoist, where you have Disease that is well represented there, but like you would never say to anyone like, have you heard Down with Disease? Here's the definitive version you need to listen to.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about jams. I feel like for me, I would go to like something like 12/28/97, which we need a better, we need better sound from that show.
Me
But
too.
Mhm.
that like, this like the Axilla into Simple and the Ghost of the Machine, like the it's like you can imagine being in that arena at the end of December 97, and all the arenas that I was in at the end of December 97. It was hot, it was smoky, it was cold outside, but hot inside. And that's like what I tend to go to. And then these like really weird, or even one of the Hampton shows, 11/21 or 11/22. Those would be like the first things I would go to if I was thinking about like, what am I in the mood for on a day when it's like 20 degrees outside? And I think that's just because I went from 20 degrees into one of those shows, in the past, but also like that weird indoor fall fish to me is like the ultimate. To me, that's like the warmest. That's the warmest fish because it's like so
Yeah,
weird
yes.
and so contained in there, so intense. That's like what I think of first.
There's something very magical about seeing fish over those New Year's runs when it's cold out. And there's just something I remember the 12/31/96. My boyfriend at the time got kicked out of the show, and I had and I had to
Are you
spend
willing to share why?
yeah, sure. Um, he was smoking a cigarette and in the venue and wouldn't put it out, and then argued with someone. Yeah. Um,
Lesson
Pretty
learned.
embarrassing. Yeah.
There's like
I don't
3
know. I
steps
don't know.
there of like ways to avoid that.
Yeah, I don't. There was so many ways, and those steps involved me saying, "Hey, let's just stop right now and like let this go," like, multiple times, and it still didn't work. Um, so then he got kicked out of the show, and so then I was in the show by myself. So I celebrated New Year's Eve by myself that night,
My
and
goodness.
had to like go find him after the show, and it was Boston. It was freezing, like very, very, very cold. And as he was running out, he was like, "Just don't forget to grab our coats. I'll be fine, Meg." And I was like, "Okay, like great." So then, like, Bohemian Rhapsody and like everything's happening, and like it's New Year's Eve and I'm by myself. And then I had to go get our coats from where we had like stashed them or whatever. And then I had to go out and like exit by myself, which is definitely not a fun thing to do when you're like 19 and you're, in a really intense state of mind. And then I walked out with like our coats into the like freezing cold in Boston. And I actually found him right away. But that will always remind me of like winter fish, of like being indoors in this like very sweaty, very intense experience. And then you're coming outside and it's freezing cold. And so, yeah, I totally get those vibes, RJ.
I wish I had a more colorful story to accompany my my desire to listen to those shows. But thank you for doing that for me.
Yeah, no problem.
It was good. Very, very evocative. Brian, what do you how does that land with you? Would you go to a fall, winter?
Not this story, but
No, I mean both, all of it.
Well, it's funny because I had just speaking of winter fish shows where there's like a catastrophe. I'm pretty sure my wife got food poisoning on 12/29/2012, and we had
oh
like
God.
amazing seats, like awesome seats, and it was my first time at MSG, and we had like been on the road all fall, and like our whole this like season of travel was like peaking with going to fish, and she got sick from like what was definitely like lukewarm Chinese food that we ordered like
Oh, no.
earlier in the day. And I remember like having to pull these two girls aside to like ask them to go into the bathroom to make sure that she was okay. And I was just like, she's not on drugs, she's just sick, like I just need to know she's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And then she rallied the next night for 12:30, and we had like one of the best show experiences I've ever had. But wasn't kicked out, but was definitely like a lot of thankfully 12/29/12 was like a terrible show because I was like in and out from the venue or from like our seats into the mezzanine the whole time. But in terms of shows, like as you're talking through this, like I'm not thinking at all about Fall Fish right now unless we have a project going on. But what I was realizing going through this is the first tour I saw Fish on is like the epitome of winter tour Fish. It's got the arena vibe that you're talking about, where it's cold outside, it's mid-February, these giant arenas that are near airports and in parts of cities that nobody really goes to. Oftentimes, especially in the case of Chicago, Fish plays at the Allstate Arena, which is just like a rundown piece of shit in like the sweetest way possible. Um, but like my mind goes to Winter '03 because I think that the band sounds like they're jamming in winter in that tour in the most incredible way possible. And if you think about that year, they release Walls of the Cave in November. They do SNL and Letterman. They do the Victor disc. They release Round Room. They play a New Year's Eve show that has like a very wintry theme to it. Seven Below inspires all these wintry jams, those kind of dark CD jams from Hampton. And then you get this 2-week long tour where, for me, the Seven Below that I saw from February 20th that gets very quiet, contemplative, kind of groovy in like an icy kind of way. The next 2 shows later, 222 in Cincinnati, they play a really cool version of Tube that has this kind of sultry late night groove to it before going into a very Arctic chilled out Bathtub Gin. And then a week later, you get the Bathtub Gin and Tweezer from 228, which is we talked about it earlier in the show. It's highly touted by the fans. That show just like even if not every song is for you, the next song is 100% for you, and it just flows in a really perfect way and kind of combines the mythological feeling and like that sense you get of like something big is happening from a New Year's Eve type show. But oh, by the way, we're in Long Island and we are in an arena that I don't even think exists anymore, but has produced some of the best Fish shows of all time for 398. The show 228 2003 that just feels like in the dead of winter, Fish is still capable of doing anything. And so I go to Winter '03 if we're gonna like do like a time and place in terms of jams that you need to really like showcase how great the band is at this point in time.
Yeah,
I
I had
love
a
it.
similar kind of feeling too, in that I was looking a lot towards like Winter '99. That's
Mm,
kind of the tour that I
Mhm.
was thinking a lot
good
about.
call.
And I was thinking about some of those jams that I just absolutely love to just like sit and hang out and listen to, like the Haleys from Portland from 12/7, the Sand from Raleigh from 12/16,
Oh,
the
God.
Tweezer, I know, the Tweezer from Raleigh, from 12/16, and you've got like the 12/8 Piper, the 12/11 Ghost. There's just a lot of incredible jams that are really, really, really contemplative and fun to listen to and perfect for this time of year. Like that's what I'm listening to when I'm reading a lot, or
Mm.
these weekends, like they're quieter, they're longer, so you get to just like sit and read and listen to really vibey, spacey ambient Fish.
12,799 Haley's
Mm,
would add.
Yes, please.
mm.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the best. I
Ivy.
listened to it again this morning. It's So
And it's
good.
interesting because that Haley's is like a summery jam in the middle of winter. But like on the other
Yeah.
side of it, the
It's like a
gin.
big wave. Yeah.
Yeah, and the gin, which I just listened to as I was preparing for Mount Rushmore, that gets quiet and contemplative. So you get like two sides of fish in that show in a really, really cool way. That's a great call.
What? Okay, so we're all like basically winter 1.0. But you said Mexico earlier, so there's some.
And Brian said 2.0.
Oh, and 2.0. So, but we're like
Yeah.
we're pre Coventry here.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah. Because the other tour I would say is like fall 98 is the other one that has some of these vibes that I like. But yeah, definitely it's a lot of, pre-Coventry.
That said, we've gotten, and you mentioned this just there. We've gotten this new tradition within Fish of Mexico shows that happen usually in February, but then the past they happen in January, and they just happen again in January this year, which is this kind of oasis in the middle of winter that I think
Mhm.
changes the dynamics of a lot for Fish because you get this like base level of where the band is at over 4 nights heading into the year, something which we will probably be discussing more in 2027 at this rate. The runs. But it's also
Mhm.
summery. Everyone's in shorts, everyone's in t-shirts. People have been swimming in the Caribbean Sea. Is that what it's still called? I don't know. People have been hanging out, like having drinks, really nice weather,
So
just,
great.
amazing stuff, but it's still in the middle of winter. And so if you're at home watching those shows, you get this really unique experience of webcasting in a chill while Fish dives deep and has this just amazing party going on down 4 hours south of wherever you live. It's a fun twist on Fish winter.
Yeah.
I do love that. And I love getting those shows and getting new fish this time of year. It's so special and so fun. And this year and last year were so good. And it's just been so fun to kind of anticipate that and know that we're going to get that when it's so cold and things seem so dark. It's nice.
Really, really like when I think I went. Did I go 3 times? I think I went 3 times, and I definitely was like, all right, that's enough. And then this month, I was like, fuck, it was not enough.
I
Really
know.
should
I
have
want to
gone.
go back too. I've only gone once, but I really want to go back. It's
So
so
great.
fun. It's just so
So great.
fun. It's so fun.
Okay, so before we like wrap up, because we could talk about this all day. What else, Brian? I want to go to you first because you have a long list, I'm sure, in your head ready. But what? Give us 5 go-to winter albums, either right now or evergreen.
Well, before I do that, I still have some Fish things to talk about. I don't know about
Don't
you, man,
rush
but
him,
like,
RJ.
I got a list here. Can we
Okay, well,
continue?
I don't want to step on your list. Please,
Let's go
please
with your
proceed.
list, Brian.
Well, I wanna just share one other aspect of technically winter fish is March fish. And March does not become spring until
Mm-mm.
what is it, like 21st or 22nd? I think it's 21st. We get
That's right.
That's the
Thank you.
equinox. Yeah.
Thank you. There's one memory that came to mind though, because March is this interesting month, depending on where you live in the country, where you start to get the initial hints of spring. You may get like a 2-day snowstorm that still hits on like March 13th, but you usually in those first 3 weeks get at least like 2 to 3 days where the sun's out a little bit longer once you start to move over to daylight savings. You also get just seasonally beautiful days where you're like, okay, I can still handle this. And there's one show that really reminds me of that sentiment. And a lot of it has to do with the idea of rebirth, renewal, but also the sense that when this show happened, where I was an unseasonably warm day where I took like a gigantic bike ride and listened to a bunch of Fish. And that was March 6th, 2009. the first Fish show of 3.0. I was living in Chicago at the time, and I have like vivid memories. It was like 65, 70 degrees. I worked a lunch shift at the restaurant I was at. I came home, I grabbed my bike, and I hadn't listened to Fish in I don't know how long at that point in time. And I threw some Fish on, and I just biked through our forest preserve near my parents' house and came back home. And I was like listening to my brother's cell phone gravelly stream of Fluffhead Divided Sky. And those two songs back to back just strike me as like a larger symbolic feeling of what Fish can do during winter and what they can do seasonally whenever they play, which is give you this sense of like renewal, rebirth, things are going to be okay again. And so I always think about that when I think of Fish in the winter.
I love that. It's true. There is such a sense of possibility in a lot of Fish. That's, I think, something that I don't know. We probably don't talk about that a lot, but it is something that I think is a reason why a lot of us go to see Fish is because they're the possibility of transcendence, and I think that that possibility kind of exists in so much of the music that we love from them.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I didn't really think about it as a as like the spring being a part of the winter, but it is. You're right. That's when many great Americans' birthdays are, right around that time. So I should be thinking about that. But
So many
you
great
know,
Americans.
so many, too many to name today.
Two
But
right here on this podcast, in
two,
fact.
we're here. We have a bunch.
You got a
of,
winter baby and a spring baby right here. Actually,
Yep.
two
Right
spring
here.
babies. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we're
Mhm.
here.
That's true.
We
I'm
have
officially spring, despite my
w-
summer vibe.
we moved to this neighborhood and we have two families who are friends on the block, and all three of the guys are all born in the same week in March, and all three of the girls are all born in the same week in July. Isn't that
That's
crazy?
very weird. Yeah, that's very weird.
It's wild. Anyway, okay, March, it's a good point. And then you start to bridge into spring. I like that.
You do, and so you get things like the 31493 Yem Spooky Yem that is from Gunnison, Colorado, which I live now in Colorado. We get 70-degree days randomly throughout the winter, and
Jealous.
mid-March is when you get that like, oh, it just happens, and you get a jam like that you're like, we're technically still in winter, but the sun's out all day. There's a chill in the air. Maybe there's a bunch of snow melting, and Fish is going to play an outstanding version of Yem. I will say though, last thing about Fish, or you guys can obviously say something else if you have it, but since RJ wants to wrap us up here today, I mentioned earlier Summery Fish, and there's no venue that feels more like Summery Fish to me than Deer Creek.
Yes.
And so I would be remiss to say, if I didn't say that I listened to 725.99 throughout the winter as well,
Of course.
because not only is that a show that should be released by Kevin Shapiro, but it's also a show that makes me feel like I'm just drenched in humidity and a little bit too high as you can get on a summer's eve, and just kind of stumbling and laughing and having a great time listening to Fish do things like my friend, into my left toe, into whipping post. I mean, just nothing makes you feel like we will be okay and we will get to summer more than something like that.
100% agree with that. I always listen to 6/1995 just when I want to feel good, because there's nothing like Deer Creek memories. Nothing.
I'm glad you got that in. Thanks, Brian. I want to just
Well done.
shout out Chad Blitz, who's watching on YouTube from South Florida, where I don't think they have a winter. I think it's just
nice.
I think it's just warm always. Appreciate everyone watching and listening. Oh yeah, by the way, if you're listening and you haven't voted on the Mount Rushmore stuff, you have to do that. But also, you should leave us voicemails and tell us what you think. We didn't get a single voicemail about the album draft. Maybe it was just too amazing. But there has to be thoughts. We want to hear thoughts. So call us at 484-416-0488, and maybe when you call Meg, we'll answer. All right.
I will say that there was no voting on any of my socials, so I just want to put that out for the record, just to keep the clean, I did not put a link to vote on any of my socials. So people couldn't vote through my socials. They had to go to the official Osiris or HF Pod accounts to vote, just so I wouldn't be accused of this. Just letting everybody know that.
Wow.
I don't think anybody's accusing you of electioneering at this point in time.
No.
Okay.
No, we're just trying to recalibrate. We're like Democrats. We're trying to start from the beginning. We need new messengers. We need a new message. We need everything.
Well, I have like just read a whole book about all the problems that liberals are having right now, and I have ideas. So maybe some of those can translate to draft.
Okay. Well, we can't
Reengineering
come
as
to
well.
you for ideas about how to beat you. That's not really going to work. We're going to have our own convention. All right, Brian, give us some albums.
Sounds like certain someone. I'll give you ideas on how you can beat me. Yeah, just do it. All right. So you changed the question here
Yeah,
based on your text.
you did.
So
You did.
I am going to go based off of what I've got right in front of me here, and I'm going to give you my favorite records of 2025 so
Great.
far, which are
That sounds even
technically
better.
winter records because they were all released.
They are.
There
thus
you
far
go.
in
Hey,
winter.
I don't have to send you every question in advance. I just said
Yeah,
what
but you
albums do
said
like
you
to
were gonna
listen
say,
to in
like-
the winter. I know that's
But
coming
no.
next. There's just separate questions. It's fine.
Oh.
I'd love to hear what you're liking so far
Well-
this year, Brian.
Well, now that I had a moment to let Meg battle for me, an album did come to mind that is to me
Oh, really?
the perfect winter album.
Can't believe it.
Um,
Okay.
and that is Beach House's Teen Dream, which came out in February of 2010, and just sounds like icicles forming on the side of your house in like just the most beautiful way possible. I love that record, and that record just like I remember it came out during the winter. I lived in South Korea, which is unquestionably the coldest I've ever been during a winter. And I just remember that being like a warm blanket. So I would highly recommend that. I would also recommend Stars of the Lid, their record, The Tired Sounds of Stars of the Lid, which is an ambient album that I adore and sounds like it's like the perfect record to go down for hibernation in the middle of winter. So very much into that. In terms of this year, I'll just throw out a couple records that I really dig that have come out this year. The new Sharon Van Etten record, Sharon Van Etten and the Attachment Theory, is the most exploratory and interesting music I've heard Sharon Van Etten release in probably 5 or 6 years. I really, really dig that. I've been listening a ton to the original soundtrack to The Brutalist, which is my favorite movie of 2024, one of my favorite movies I've seen in 2025. And the soundtrack, the score is just remarkable. Even if you haven't seen the movie, you should listen to it. It's just very thematic, and it sounds like romantic era classical music. And there's great song titles like Hand Job and Porn and a few others I'm forgetting about, but unbelievable movie, unbelievable score. And then two others just really quick is the new album, which I think is the last record by The Weeknd, Hurry Up Tomorrow, which builds off of Dawn FM that came out in 2022 that I absolutely loved. Sounded like a cross point between the war on drugs and R&B. And I can't get enough of it. I love that record. I just put it on. We had a work event on Thursday night, and someone asked me to DJ, and I put that record on, and I had like 6 people come up to me and compliment it, which I was like, oh man, I didn't really realize this was reaching young entrepreneurs of Denver. This is amazing. And then my favorite record of the year is Blue Lake's Weft, which came out a couple weeks ago. I did not love the Blue Lake record from 2023, but this one immediately hit me. Very Americana, atmospheric, experimental, somewhat ambient, somewhat noise, somewhat industrial, somewhat jazz. Like there's just a lot going on there, and I'm super into this record. It's the kind of album that like for me, albums I love are when I can't like figure out what's going on, and this record absolutely does that. So Blue Lake Weft, that is my favorite record of the year so far. Who knows where it will end up 10 months, 11 months from now, but that is all I'm listening to when I'm not prepping for random fish podcasts in the coming weeks. What do you guys got?
It's a great album. I really like it too. Well, I've been doing something a little different this year. I've been doing some deep dives, which have been really fun. So I've listened to how many? I've listened to 82 albums this year already, which I'm kind of proud about. But I did a Beatles deep dive and then I did the Fish deep dive. And then now I'm in the middle of a Miles Davis deep dive. So I've on his 30th album right now. Turns out, guys, a lot of albums. So I am now in 1968 in Miles in the Sky. It's the album that he made with it's the second album with the quintet, or with the second quintet, excuse me. It's really awesome. It's a transitional record, like between him going electric and not. And so it has like some electric on it, some not. A lot of open extended improv. It's been great. It's been really fun just seeing what stood out to me about which albums of his that I've loved the most. And I'm really enjoying that. And I've been listening to some new albums. Just been fun, but I've mostly just been listening to that and a lot of Fish. But I do really love the new Rose City Band album, Sol y Sombra. Awesome. I love that band. Talk about summer vibes. Their last album was the most summery album ever. But I love this one too. And imagine it's going to get a lot of play for me this year. How about you, RJ?
Wow. I mean, mine are going to be albums that I would go to in the winter are going to be albums that were all made at least 10 years ago, if not 30, maybe 40, maybe 50.
Right.
Yeah. The most recent would probably be Lost in the Dream. I think that's like a great winter album. War on Drugs, one of my favorite albums ever. It's just got like a comfortable, soothing, amazing. What an amazing record that is.
It's beautiful.
I also listen to a lot of Led Zeppelin in the winter. I love Led Zeppelin so much. Physical Graffiti is one of my top 5 albums of all time. I could listen to that album every day. I feel like it's good for like a winter Friday night when you really just need to like turn up the volume a little bit on the stereo, which people did in the 70s, but some people still do now, like me.
Yeah. So rock on, RJ.
I appreciate you guys humor me in this. But like, I mean, let's be honest, really, it's just mostly listening to the Grateful Dead because what season is not good for the Grateful Dead?
That is every season. I agree.
It's every season. It's every day.
But I do feel like that's what's dropped off the most for me, which is sad.
Yeah.
I listen to like less Grateful Dead than I ever have in my life. It's really sad. So I need encouragement. Whenever you're listening to something, just send it to me so that I remember.
I gave you some recently, remember?
I know. And I listened to a lot of it. Yeah, it was really great.
They just released at the end of January, Dave's Picks 53, which is October 2nd, 1976, and then I think in April there's a 73 show coming. The mid 70s is just,
that's the best.
For me.
That fall 76. Big shout out to, I believe it's 9/28/76. It may be 9/27. It has this just like insane sandwich second set that is, it's my favorite Help Slip Franklin that we've ever gotten. Unbelievable stuff. But to your point, Meg, about Miles Davis, I was just pulling up. I listen to this over winter break every year. The final tour, the Bootleg Series Volume 6. It is a 4-disc, 4-hour compilation of John Coltrane and Miles Davis playing in 1963 in Europe, and that's the shit. That's the shit.
Stuff right there.
The Dead is always like a spring listen for me. Open the house up Saturday morning, making pancakes for the kids, and like hearing Jerry's guitar just soothe your soul. That's where it's become, because you're right. Like ever since 36 from the Vault ended, when I was listening to more Grateful Dead than probably anything while helping make that show, my listening has definitely fallen off, and that's not something to be proud of. That's just not something to be proud of.
No, if
Let
you're
it be
not taking your vitamins, it's going to show.
No.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I
I
agree. I listen to much more Dead in the summer.
Hmm. I think that's, it's for every season, in my opinion. It's for every day.
I agree.
It's for every day of the year, just like HF Pod. Do we know what we're doing for next week's episode yet?
I think it's, TBD. We have
We
a
have an
plan. but we
idea.
don't know if it's, yeah.
Some of us have prepped. Some of us have taken detailed notes. Some of us have built their arguments and their defensive
I really
stances as
I really
well.
like the shows when I listen back. I came away being pleasantly surprised.
You know what? Should we just say we're going to do this episode if our guest isn't
And just do
available to
it.
join
Yeah,
us?
yeah,
let's
yeah.
do it.
Let's just
Let's
do it then. I think that's
Okay,
right.
Brian, what is it?
So we were hoping this week to have young Ryan Storm on to talk about Mexico 2019, a run that he pushes on me every 10 days or so. And I'm like, hey man, there's
Quite aggressive.
tons of other stuff to listen to, but I remember it being fun. So we decided we would talk with him about it. He had some travel delays and some travel issues coming back from Grand Rapids. Goose was too hot. Talk about a hard quartet. I'll tell you what, that band was too hot that they just couldn't, he couldn't travel back. And so we had to pivot this week. We're hoping to do it next week, but we're running into some scheduling issues. Ryan, open up the schedule, do what you can. If he's here, we're going to talk. If he's here, we're going to talk with him about Mexico 2019. If he's not here, we're going to talk about Mexico 2019. So next week, we're going to talk about Mexico 2019. I will say, just to kind of pepper the listeners out there, I walked away with one question coming out of Mexico 2019. What would 2004 Trey sound like if he were sober? That was my big takeaway.
I think that's fair. It's very loose. It's very loose.
Way loose.
Which
it is like, we don't really care how these songs are supposed to sound. Let's get to the jam.
And also, if you're going to listen, I think this is probably part of what Ryan likes about it, but Paige is just all over these shows. Like he's like leading the band most of the time, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's an interesting, because it's not that long ago. And a lot of the approach to the shows are very similar to what we get now. But to your point, it's before Trey gets the synth pedal and before Paige is really emphasizing his synthesizers. So it's kind of this, it's a very unique, very different sound from what we get in a lot of modern day fish jamming, wrapped in this package that almost feels like a 2024 show just 6 years earlier.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Okay, so we are talking about Mexico 2019 next week. It's gonna be warm. We're gonna have warm ideas. Hopefully our guest will join us, but if our guest doesn't join us, we'll do it anyway.
Yeah,
new approach.
It's on you, Rye. It's on you, bud.
And then we have the following week, we're going to start our Mount Rushmore series, which we're super excited about. So leave us voicemails and tell us what you think. And we hope you had fun hanging out with us today on this President's Day when we think about all the presidents. I hope there are more. I hope there are more presidents. That's my one hope.
yes.
That's the one hope.
Yeah.
There should be more, because presidents are interesting. I read a biography of James Garfield over the summer. And I don't know how many of you out there have thought about James Garfield, but pretty interesting life. Nobody. Pretty interesting life. Really interesting look at where America was in the mid 19th century. I'm finishing right now the recent biography of Ronald Reagan. I was really going in with an open mind. Like, I'm willing to be convinced. And the one thing I'm convinced about is that nobody could say meaner things in a nicer way than Ronald Reagan. And I guess that's a skill. That's a skill in and of itself.
Which has been thrown out the window now.
Yeah, we're just skipping past the saying things nicely, and we're just like saying the mean stuff out loud. It's an interesting time to be alive. And so, yeah, it would be nice to have, like, you know what I'd really like to have is another TR, guy who really wants to fight for the little guys, but really believes in the power of America and speaks in that sort of manner of like, hey, we are a strong We are a ambitious country, but also like, hey, poor people should have a chance too. You know, can we just have one of those?
Yeah, or maybe just like one who's really interested in learning and doing better and, you know, being a good person. Maybe one of those.
Wow.
Kind of
Would be
like how
nice.
George Bush decided to channel all of his failure into painting. You know, he learned a new skill. That's
Yeah,
exactly what Meg is saying right there.
Yeah,
All
who knew
right.
that he would be like our model?
I know.
Times have
I'm
really
joking.
gotten
I'm
fucking
joking.
bad,
I'm
man.
joking.
Take him back. Let's
Right?
bring him
He
back.
doesn't seem as bad now.
Let's bring him
I
back.
don't know about that.
All right, guys. We're gonna see you next week for Mexico 2019. Everyone have a good rest of the week. We'll see you then. Bye.